Hello, everyone, and welcome. So, I've just heard the news that we in the disclosure community have lost another truly brilliant mind, Mr. Dan Willis, who's become a great friend of mine in the past few years as I started speaking with him about the work he had been doing with Marcel Vogel at IBM, and they were both looking into the properties of quartz crystals and specifically finding that when you create a crystal that's cut at very specific angles, like this one here, you end up getting all these unique properties and qualities out of the crystal. It can do incredible things. So you can see here, there's actually a 51.843 degree angle on one termination point, which happens to be the exact slope angle of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And on the other end, you have a 60-degree angle, which happens to be the exact slope angle of most of the obelisks in Egypt. And so this is something that's obviously very keyed into the ancient technology that I've been studying, the sacred science, this lost science of crystal technology that goes back to Atlantis, I believe, and to the Golden Age. And Dan's going to tell us a lot about that tonight because I ended up recording a session with him. I don't want to call it an interview because that's not really what it was. It was actually meant to be a 10-minute quick little meeting between me and Dan and Veda Austin, who I'd recently begun speaking with about some similar research she had been doing with water. So Dan was making these incredible discoveries with quartz. Veda was making these incredible discoveries with water. And I just felt compelled to try and bring them both together. Veda was working on a documentary, which should be coming out soon, actually, that addressed water's role within this ancient technology. And so I said, well, I think we should get Dan Willis involved in this conversation. And she was more than happy to do so. But this was really just meant to be a meeting where we got to say hi and meet and greet basically for 10 minutes. It ended up turning into a conversation over 2 hours that just touched on so many incredible topics. And, I have to apologize actually because there's a section where Dan actually just got into presenting some of this information with some slides, and I kept interrupting him simply because I couldn't help myself because I wanted to just open up every single one of these doors he was opening and kind of brushing over these things. Like in this slide, you have the secret of the universe, the specific frequency that taps into the holographic matrix of reality, things like this. And he's passing over it quickly because it was really just a casual conversation. But gratefully, I was able to ask him later if he minded me publishing it because, I didn't want to publish it just being a private conversation, but he and Veda both said they don't mind at all. And I'm so grateful for that because there's such incredible information in this conversation. It could be expanded into a week-long dialogue without ever getting boring for a moment. The similarities between what the two of them were finding, this is why I felt compelled to bring these two individuals together who are both finding keys to this ancient technology that are absolutely essential in order for us to resurrect that technology, that comprehension of frequency, of sympathetic resonance, of quantum entanglement, of bridging straight to source, tapping into this mind and memory of the entire universe. That's the type of thing we're talking about here. And there were so many connections between their work. So I was so grateful that we actually just clicked record on this and said, well, maybe just for future reference. Now, it'll be the last interview released from Dan, I hate to say, because it could have been leading to so many more, and we could have learned so much more. I feel it's only appropriate to finally get this interview out today because it's more needed than ever before. And actually, Veda's work has been moving along as well. However, we kind of jump into the deep end of this stuff in this interview, so I want to just give a couple little points of introduction so it makes a little bit more sense. The Vogel crystals, Marcel and Dan found out so much about these and what could be done just by cutting these angles into the top of it and ensuring that the cuts are absolutely parallel to the natural lattice structure of the crystal. And this is something that ends up kind of creating a sympathetic reaction with the entire universal structure of all creation, basically. You can get these crystals. This is actually not only to the specifications of the Vogel crystal, but of what's called the Vogel Iridian crystal now. And so, if it truly is as important as I believe, and if it is potentially a technology that could propel humanity forward into a new golden age, as I believe, it would be worth the experiments. So you can look up his articles. He wrote an incredible article I referenced throughout that is about Marcel's work and talks about the water structuring and all these different devices. He's also got endless interviews. Of course, you can watch for free and just learn all about his work, as well as Marcel Vogel's work. Veda, same deal. Her work is such an immense subject to get into, and I believe in its own way, it has also uncovered a certain key aspect of this original sacred science, this ancient pyramid science, the obelisk science, and how water plays into that. So, structuring this water, I believe it was central to what the ancient Egyptians were doing, and it could actually turn water into, like I say, a liquid crystal form is one of the terms that Marcel Vogel uses. Turning it into a crystal means you're creating a hard drive essentially, where you can store information or energy itself, actually. So all of this connects because the Egyptians were using this Aswan granite that's very, very high in quartz specifically for that reason to make their obelisks, to make the pyramids, things like that. Um, and thankfully, I don't have to try and cover all of Veda's work as an introduction because she's, for one thing, got this incredible book called The Living Language of Water, which, I mean, this is one of the most amazing books I've ever seen. And this is a quantum leap in science, in technology, in consciousness studies all at once. It's art, it's absolutely mind-blowing. And so I definitely recommend getting this book. And she also has an incredible website that I'll also put in the description. And I said, Veda, we got to talk to Dan Willis. We've got to pair this with the Vogel crystals, as she was already very much into Marcel Vogel, into a lot of these other people we're going to mention in this interview. So I think that's about all I need to really say to introduce the subject. It is what it is, and I think I'm just so grateful that I have one last interview we can watch with Dan, because he touched on so much of the core material here that is absolutely essential, what's most important. He also gave Veda some suggestions for experiments she could do with water using the specific frequency. And Veda and I are hoping to do a follow-up video to this where we can actually do those experiments and report on what she finds. So I think that's about all I have to say here. And I'll just let you watch the video, and I hope you enjoy. All right, thank you. But I will never, ever publish anything from either of you if I don't have your total, absolute, final consent on it. And
Mhm.
I tell that everyone I work with. So yeah, I'll record it too, just for the record, at least. Unless we want to use it
Mm.
someday, but my hair looks pretty bad, so I don't know.
I swear to God, every time I've spoken to you twice now, and it's been a hair situation. It's usually my hair situations. I'm glad it's not me for a change.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be that way. My hair does this thing, and like I said, I don't want to be the Giorgio Tsoukalos of the group, but all right.
It's all good.
Okay,
We're
cool.
interested in what we're saying rather than what we look like. Um,
Yeah, just for
and
reference.
I am really excited to hear that you're talking about Marcel Vogel because he's an unsung hero to me. Do you know of a guy called
Hmm.
Apollo? Him and his wife,
Oh yeah, yeah, I know him well.
yeah, Dr. Carly Noudet. When I
Yeah,
met
she's
them,
got a great book. I love her
so
her
do I.
book she put out. Huh?
I wrote a little bit in it about the synergy of salt and water, which was a kind of later addition. They gave me some amazing gifts, crystal gifts. But one of them was a genuine piece of Yaming Dew. Have you heard of that crystal?
What is it again?
It's called Yaming Dew. It's known as the dragon's pearl. It's I can show you what it does, and I'd be curious because there have been some links with it with technology potentially used within pyramids, even if it was just to light places up naturally. I gave it to my husband, and he has a genuine piece that he wears. It's the one I was given, but I knew it was never for me. And I can show you what it does. It's without telling you, I can just show you. It's pretty amazing. Would
Oh,
you like?
sure, sure. Yeah, I'm
I'll hog
eager to
you
learn more.
because I am really, really interested in what you have to say and to work with the time you've got. But I'll take you
Yeah.
and just see if he's got it handy. Brian, Brian.
Yeah, I hope we can do a call maybe in a few days and spend a little more time, but glad we can get a
Right.
real quick session here right now.
Okay, yeah. Let me just put it in the light for a minute. Looks very, very, very much like just New Zealand greenstone. Doesn't really look like all that much in the daytime. That's not New Zealand greenstone, but it does look like Pounamu. And then when we go over here, now that it's had a little light,
Hmm.
we're in the dark now. Can you see how it's glowing?
Oh
Oh
yeah,
wow.
yeah.
And it can glow for up to 8 hours. And when you put
Wow.
it, well, actually even longer than that, especially when it's been in the sun for a little while. But you can put it into, pour boiling hot water on top of it, and it almost sparks. It's quite a remarkable stone. So I was curious if you'd known about it. So Dan, I'd love to hear more, and I'd love to share about what I'm hoping to do.
Yes, yes. I'm yeah, I'm excited to share what yeah, after 3 years of question answer, we've in a kind of a nutshell or a spherical bubble, you could say, in the infinite multiverse that we're in a dimensional sphere, and all of this resides in the void, and it's patterned after the flower of life pattern, the structuring of it, and that each dimensional sphere is filled with ether, and that the one that we're in, each dimension can have different frequency formula, which comes from source. The particular one that we're in has 12 densities, and that water and quartz are interdimensional bridges. They everything's based on these core fractal formulas of this holographic reality that is tetrahedral in nature, and that we've found that if you take our engineer, I'm working with a science team, an international science team in Switzerland and Paris and things, and we're taking the information of the technology that they use on their planet and working on quantifying it to bring technology that could be used usefully, on this planet. They power their entire planet. Jenhan revealed to me I was once a scientist in Atlantis, and I knew a lot of this stuff. And so one question I asked was forbidden by the Prime Directive not to answer because it was a key enabling technology of how they power their entire planet, which opens up a singularity vortex within the crystal that what they call frill, which is like a life force of the universe, emanates, and that's how they power their planet in these large pyramid structures that the 51.843 degree angle pyramid is actually a harvester of the ether energy that and then it transponds, like they use quantum transfer to all their devices, and they also use it for their spaceships as well. The frill is captured in a central core which has crystals that transfers it to the red ionized mercury perpendicular plasma, that propels their ships. But what's of most interest, I think, that you would have is what their understanding of what water is and what and its relationship with quartz, both being interdimensional bridges, as we know, as Marcel pointed out, back in the 80s, that uh, in these ice core samples that they took in Antarctica, they found that all the major crystallographic forms in nature are formed in water. It's universally resonant, as you're one of the people on this planet that know most.
Figuring out.
Yeah. So the thing that interests me was that one thing that Jen Han said, and we brought this up in our last session Elaine and I recorded, was that the resonant frequency of water is 2.45 gigahertz, which is in microwave ovens, that's the exact frequency they use. It oscillates the water molecule to heat up the food. Um, it Sadly, he said that our bodies are made of these microcrystals and water that are impacted by these frequencies. And 2.45 gigahertz happens to be in the center of the Wi-Fi band.
Mhm.
And so I highly recommend everybody to, opt for a direct connection instead of being exposed to the Wi-Fi signals, because he did say it causes harm. And I looked up a National Institute of Health study that confirms that it damages our DNA. So when you resonate water at the 2.45 with these electromagnetics, it's very unhealthy. But there's a solution to that, and that's resonating at 4096 hertz. 4096 hertz is the resonance of the quartz crystal lattice structure, and it is in synchronized frequency with source. Everything is built light, love, water, quartz, all of it is based on the same frequency, but they're fractal um, uh, fractal integrals of this formula. He's unable to give me the exact formula because the prime directive doesn't allow it yet, but he's given me enough to understand that if you resonate, our engineer made these little devices. They sell them at Chris. I don't have any financial interest in any of this, but our engineers made this. It's a precise crystal controlled oscillator. I think they're like $80 or something like that. But you can use your cell phone so long as you turn off all of your Wi-Fi and cell and everything like that. And there's free apps on iPhone and Android that you can plug in a sound oscillator at 4096. It's accurate enough that when you oscillate water with it, it will clear all the disharmonics in the water and make it healthful. So I'd be really curious in some of your research work, if you expose some water to, without any other electromagnetics, just the sound of 4096 hertz, which is the um, fractal resonance of source in our particular dimension. Source is at a level of perfection and resonates with the frequency of love. And as we evolve through the densities, love is like it's like the bridge that bridges us from the lower densities into the higher densities. So beings that are at a higher density level, they resonate more with love and more with perfection. That's why they look so good. But you know, it we use it on the crystal as well. You put 4096 hertz. Una, who's she's an Altean. The Palladians, who I'm communicating with in the Galactic Federation of Worlds, they are 300 years more advanced than our understanding, but the Alteans are 20,000 years more advanced in their understanding. And
That's basically the Atlanteans, Alteans. Is that right?
the Alteans, yeah, they're part of the Cedars, the
Yeah,
Intergalactic
related to
Confederation.
the Atlanteans, or had the same technology as, or that's what
Yeah,
Elaine was
yeah,
saying,
yeah.
basically.
In fact,
It's
I
funny,
knew
Star
Dr. Ray
Trek
Brown.
actually calls them that. in one of the Star Trek episodes, they're talking when they go to the planet where the whole planet is like Atlantis. This is a sidetrack, but just quick. Is like they actually call them Malteans, where they go down and it's like the
Oh,
perfect
there's so much
society.
soft disclosure out there, you know, in science
Yeah,
fiction, you know.
I don't have
You
to
know,
jump into that now. I'll let you continue. Yeah.
yeah, when you're a kid, you watch science fiction, you think it's all make believe, you know, and you find out
Yeah.
the real story is so much more fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
The
so
news is fake and the science fiction is real.
so Una checked it. Uh, you know, you're familiar with Elena Danaan, I'm assuming.
Mhm.
Yeah, and she
Yeah,
has,
I did.
you know, she had to repurpose a quantum communication implant, and so Una went through her pineal gland and used this device, and or it could be any device that puts out a pure sine wave at 4096 hertz. It has to be exactly on the frequency though. Um, and it completely clears the crystal structure down to base zero. And so it'll do that with water as well. And so that's the important message I want to share with you is that creator source frequency in this particular dimensional sphere, and it's different in different dimensions of the multiverse, but that's the frequency that um, water and quartz resonate with, and you can clear it to be healthful in the body. In fact, you can put it on your pineal gland. The calcium carbonate crystals in your pineal gland will actually, it helps clear the pineal gland. Um, so, you know, there's so much more to say on all this, but without going into a whole,
Uh,
a whole thing.
I was just quick to add too that it's kind of like the devices that I'm working on, the tensor rings, and they're like scalar wave devices or that create tensor fields. This is what developed by Slim Sperling recently. But it's basically it seems to be an ancient art where you're locking this copper twisted wire into a specific frequency and you can use it in a different way. I'm making crowns and stuff, but I could incorporate what you're saying into it as well. But I definitely think everything Dan is saying right now is absolutely understood by the ancient Egyptians and very much tied to what they were doing with the obelisks and the quartz inside the granite and all that.
Yeah,
Thank
copper attracts frill, by the way. And silver is the antipode of copper, which radiates frill. And so that's where they wrap the crystal clockwise and counterclockwise with these two metals, and it creates a dual torsion field that conjugates with the lattice structure and opens up the singularity vortex that releases the frill. And we've built these frill generators, but um, they need optimizing, so we're still working on it.
Generator crystal on our planet Terra.
I gave Veda the one article you wrote on the Marcel Vogel stuff. I don't know if you saw that, Veda, but I was
Hmm.
saying like three-quarters of the way down that page is where you see the tubes wrapping around the crystal. And I think what Dan is saying also, it could be you could create these things that Marcel had created where you've got the crystal and the water spinning around it. And if you put this frequency into the crystal, then the crystal is going to make all that water forever. Basically, if I'm saying this correctly, Dan, be charged with that same purified energy. The crystal will do the job of if you put your loving intention, your or that frequency into the crystal, you clear the crystal, and then it continues to do that job to any water running around it. Is that basically accurate?
Well, water and quartz, they interface.
Yeah,
And so does love and
it
light.
structures it.
You know, they're all based on the same core fractal formula. So water and quartz, they interface because they're on the same core fractal formula of each other. Marcel discovered that the intermolecular bonding angle of water was at 20, 26 and 104.5 degrees, which if you look at 52 degrees in quartz, it's both half and double 52 degrees. It's like angular harmonic resonance. You know, just like in the electromagnetic spectrum, you have a signal in the electromagnetic spectrum, you'll have harmonics. And the harmonics, the signals will, the information on the signal will be transferred into the harmonics as well. So it's sort of like a angular harmonic resonance transfer, as Marcel was able to transform thousands of this rot gut wine in Northern California into a California award-winning wine using a crystal that he imprinted a this fine wine essence into it and ran 7 clockwise turns around it, and thousands of gallons of this terrible wine turned into a California award-winning wine just by transferring, because the quartz was resonating that and transferring it into the water that's in the wine.
Thank you. I'm curious about a couple of things. One is the water, have you ever been able to test the frequencies of water within the primary water source, the water inside of the Earth's mantle? Does it resonate at a different frequency, given that it's sort of self-made within the Earth as opposed to having been through the hydrological system?
I would say it's just it's probably, like Jenhan said about star water, water that's in space, that's this pristine water. I would say that the source water is probably closer along that lines, rather than the regular waters that we have. But, as water just reflects our environment, as you know so well, because it's so incredibly sensitive. Um,
I'd
yeah.
I would love to be able to show you just some pictures that I'm getting on a regular basis that I've put a little focus into. I've been asking lots and lots of people about what their feeling is about it, and it's like clearly coding, and it's over and over. It's very, very repeated. I also want to say that I've been working with, well, firstly, have you heard of the telepathy tapes? Have you listened to any of them yet?
What is it called again? I'm sorry, my hearing is so bad. It's one of the things I'm working on, healing myself.
The telepathy tapes. It's essentially it's kind of become almost like the number one well, not just podcast, but like series of talks in the world right now. It is essentially about autistic non-speakers who are able, they've proven, I mean, I already believed this anyway, but they've been able to prove that they are telepathic with either their parents or their carers, but they also have access to other realms of consciousness. And some of them are able to type and spell, as well as being telepathic. And I've been working with 7 of them from the telepathy tapes, and to call them a savant is almost an understatement. The information that I have been getting from the last 8 weeks only is what has spurred me to decide to go ahead and make a documentary, because the information that I'm getting from them about water is the quantum leap forward and paradigm change that the world needs to see about water. And one of the reasons of which I'm wanting to put a documentary together is because there are some people around the world that I know and that I'm getting to know, including these young people who are mostly, for the most part, in their 20s. Their voices need to be heard, and I think that this can be done in a way where there are simple explanations. They speak of very high level things in simple ways, which is extremely hard to do, because we can spend a lot of time trying to explain things, but they're able to do it where your mind goes, you just get it across the
I
board.
know, I know. It's like that with the Palladian scientist, Jen Hallam. His choice of words, the way he words things, makes it so easy to comprehend and understand. And always, I notice there's always a sensitivity to never say anything that is disturbing in any way. One second.
While you're looking, I'm going to find the thing I'd like to show.
Hello? Hello? Hello, hello, hello. All right, goodbye, goodbye. Ah.
I have been also working with water from Antarctica. I have a friend that's a survivalist that's been able to, well, let's just say I have some pretty amazing samples from both ice core water and waters from in and around Antarctica, and I've been seeing repeated symbols in ice. But what I'm going to show you is the repeated pattern that I keep seeing that looks a lot like ancient language, and it is clear coding. So this is the obvious ancient languages, hieroglyphs and cuneiform, and you can see the kinds of patterns. I mean, I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples of these. Each one is its own kind of coding. And what the autistic community have been saying is that each little line is a doorway to another realm of consciousness, and that this is far, far more than we realize. We're still learning and getting more and more information, and I have shared multiple examples to them, and each one has a different, let me just get it up for you, a different message, which I think is also really helpful and important to know. Some examples would be like these. So you can see this is goes over and over again. What was interesting about this one is I was curious about biological intelligence as compared to like an artificial intelligence. And I was asking, really, is this a biological intelligence coming from creator? And essentially my thought without saying it was this created by the hand of God? And you can see this hand up here quite clearly.
Yeah, yeah, source creator, absolutely.
And so the patterns are, you can see a pattern is what I'm saying. And I think that when you see repeated patterns showing up in water, then this is my like Rosetta Stone, this one. The reason I say that is because you have hieroglyphs. This is the hieroglyph for water. Over here is, whoops, excuse me. Oh, where did it go?
Yeah, they look like the various registers on the reliefs. So it looks like there's cartouches in there, like the symbols that have the royal names in them.
And yes, and over
Really?
here too, this is like the double reed, these two here. Can you see me? See it? And then
Yeah.
here, when we move over to this side, you see very much like Arabic. See here?
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. Yes.
And so we have
Yeah.
a lot of different coding or kind of language in this one, and which is why I call it the Rosetta Stone, of which I'm still learning about. And there are many, many, many more. I mean, it kind of goes on, and to understand, and then I had AI take the background noise out of the of one of them, and let me pull that up for you, because I think it's very helpful to see what that might look like, to give a clearer look of the kind of coding. And where is it here?
Be interesting to have artificial intelligence attempt to decipher it, with
Well,
the
interesting that
patterns.
interesting, and yet it's not something I want to work with. One of the reasons I pivoted, and I'm not an AI person at all. I'm not even that much tech person. I'm working with it all the time, but I was like, well, I wonder, because many people asked if it can help me in any way. The more I worked with it for about 4 days, the more I got this amount from it, and then I'm like, you know what? I want to go in a different direction, and that direction took me to the autistic non-speakers, and what they've taught me is beyond what I believe AI could ever teach me. But this is what it gave me at any rate, which I think in many ways just made things even more confusing. But you can see
Wow.
it's taken the background out
Huh.
of it. And so now you can see there's a lot of information within that. And then it was like me trying to reduce it to see how could I even use this
Yeah.
line of coding for within my work. And the things that look like little telephones, I focused on that just because that's what stood out to me in this one little section. as well as the circles touching each other or looking like side by side. And I was trying to intuit words because I work with words all the time. Words, same word in different languages. And what I have is a collection of approximately 46 what I call hydroglyphs, which are separate to the patterns and pictures that I see. A hydroglyph essentially is a symbol I have to have seen repeat at least 50 times using the same written word influence in multiple languages. And
Wow.
for the word link, I saw that telephone thing appear, but that's it. That's the most, it's extremely complex, as you can see, within all of this, because there's just so much really to understand and to learn. And I mean, it goes on. You know, yesterday, Trevor, we mentioned the Bermuda Triangle, and Dan, I don't know if you're aware, but I can show you a picture of her. This is my grandmother. And back in the 1940s, she was rather radical, and she ditched my grandfather, and she ended up remarrying, and they flew to from England to Miami, and from Miami they were going to fly to Barbados, and they took this plane called the Star Aerial, and it went down over the Bermuda Triangle and was never
Oh my
found.
God.
And so when I put, because this is an article that someone found for me and gave it to me about her and what happened. So I basically put my water on top of the article with the inquiry, what happened in the Bermuda Triangle. And water designed a really complex pattern that looks a lot like a portal or something like that, or a vortex, which is a very unusual design for water and ice, particularly. You know, I think that there's more conversations to be had there. I talk about Akasha just because this really does look so much like ancient language, and the multiple people that I've been working with, including the autists, talk about different stages of water. And I think that this is something I'd like to also just quickly share before you have to go, and I can learn more. And I want to
Well,
ask.
the alarm will go off when I have to, I have I don't live like a hermit off the grid on the mountains with my wife up here. And we don't see anybody for years. It just so happens today a friend from San Francisco is stopping by. But I've got some time if you do. I only have to go when the alarm goes off for the security system. Let me know that somebody's came in. But you know, I worked with Dr. Ray Brown with the pyramid that was in the Bermuda Triangle, and Jen had quite to say about that. And you know, it'd be interesting to Elena to look at some of these because of her background with all these multiple languages and things, and the work that she did as an
Yeah. I
archaeologist.
was I was telling Veda yesterday a little bit about Ray Brown. He was the guy I was saying went down to the city off of Cuba and the lights were still on where he found this crystal. That story really I'd heard years ago, but Dan gave me the better resource to look into that. But I also have been getting into a lot of this stuff with Tony, especially when it comes to the obelisks and the ancient civilizations utilization of this technology and how it does correspond straight to the ETs that are
Yeah,
sharing this now. And
I'm working with Tony, you know, on we have a device called the reality transflux modulator,
hell
which
yeah.
with your intentions of consciousness, you can modulate the fabric of reality. And that's another thing I'd be curious to see what Veda could see um, with how this is Palladian technology. This is how they convert etheric energy into physical reality. And yeah, I got to get the science video to both of you.
Yeah.
It'd
Well,
be
that's the thing. Like,
much better about how the geometry of the matrix. There's like this masculine feminine geometry that comes together of the hexagon and the pentagon, and how these dual torsion fields come together and they open up this singularity, which creates this transfluxation that when you kind of get into a state of gamma brainwaves, you can modulate that, and it writes it into the
The
holographic
reality
grid of
program.
reality forever, because it's going through the void. The void is there's no linear time or space in the void. So whatever you imprint in that, it imprints at the highest density level, which is source, but it imprints it forever. So it lasts in order to persist into coming into manifestation. So
It's like rewriting the Matrix, recurrent, basically, like
Well,
recoding
yeah.
the universe in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah, when
yeah,
you
Well,
understand it's tetrahedral, everything is based on these tetrahedron structures that forms all of our holographic reality we experience.
I have a symbol for free energy, which looks like this. And it's a repeated pattern. So you can kind of see this pattern
hexagonal grid.
with
Yeah.
emanating hexagons coming out here, but it's also over
Yeah.
here. And I think when you start to see these repeated patterns, even like in here, you can see it's really quite complex. There's these go on in very different, these are all different examples of the same thing. But
Oh, yeah.
I think that there's much we can learn from one another. I would like to pivot over because one of the areas I'm wanting and considering is that, for first off, just for this documentary that I'm personally investing in the beginning, is to just get like a 4 minute trailer, really, to then do crowdfunding, of which I've already been offered to be bought. Someone already wants to buy what I'm doing, and I haven't even done it. So that's a good sign. I want it to evolve, so I'm saying I'm not taking any offers for it right now, but essentially I would like to do a doco series focused on water and specific topic. And one of those topics, I would like it to be water and ancient technology. And I think that it is obvious that water and pyramids have a connection together. And there's a few people I can ask about that that could give me actual uh, information that can be somehow proven. However, I think we can, I feel that you two, and perhaps there's another person, but I don't know who that is yet, can really bring some information to light. Now, I do have the autistic community that I will also be asking. So in each one, I will have them as people that I ask these questions to, as well as people that have spent their lives saturated within these kinds of topics, such as yourselves. So um, I, I just kind of wanted to state what it is that I'm hoping to do, and with no attachment whatsoever to any outcome either. There's absolutely no pressure to do this or not do this, but that's part of what I'm hoping to do. And also, if that is nothing that resonates, I'm more than happy just to hear any information that you might like to privately share with me, so that it can build my own inner, inner standing of where to go from here as well. Because I feel like a huge piece of what I'm doing now isn't meant to be all kept to me. I feel like a big piece is also about sharing what is possible to get across to people in the simplest way. Because if I want to reach a lot of people, and that's always been with my work, I need to be a bridge from science, art, and consciousness and spirituality, where we have different perspectives that are saying the same thing.
Yeah. There are many options for this. I think all three of us are on the page where it's like we just want to get all the most important information out in whatever form is best. You know,
There's so much information out there. The thing that separates information is, when you can quantify it, like you've done, Veda, which
yeah.
is, incredible. The work you've done, it definitely shows the nature of water. What I would like to see, what's exciting to me about making this connection is I want to be able to uh, I think water is such a perfect medium for being receptacle to the energies, and that I would are you in New Zealand right now? Are you are okay. I was thinking somehow shipping you one of these devices, but actually you could actually just use your phone, like I said, and make sure the Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cellular, everything's off. And I can send you a link of a recommended app that's simple, just to punch in 4096 hertz. Um, Expose the speaker to the water before and after. Do like a before and after with the water, and I
Well,
know water is so sensitive. It's like even your thoughts about the whole thing is going to get, impacted. But I would be curious to see what happens in the structuring of the water exposed to that frequency that Denhan has numerous times said over and over again that this frequency completely removes the disharmonics in the water and is healing. In fact, when I drink water, I take the little device along with do a visualization of the light of source going into it, and I can taste the its sweetness of the water. It transforms it. So I would love to be able to somehow, we have a small team of scientists, but nobody's picked up water yet. Everybody's working on the frill generator, and I've
I'd
been kind of,
be happy
yes,
to
go ahead.
I'll be happy to help you. I will be in the States end of April all throughout May as well. So if you want to get me a device or if we can connect, then that would be amazing. And I can certainly use the app. What I generally do is that I work with tap water that I've collected from Auckland. I live rurally, so we only have rainwater here. So I have to go in and get it. And as my control, I really hate that word, but people know what I mean. And so what I found is that you do use controls, and then I have my tap water. I can prove that it's got disordered patterns. And then I let that melt. And then I use the exact same water that has been melted. And one, I use no influence. So when I refreeze it, we still see disorder. And then when I refreeze the one where I've exposed it to something such as a frequency, then we can usually see that there has been a change in frequency and a change in structure. And we get to see what those structures look like. And then I repeat that at least 3 or 4 times to see whether it is consistent. And I also do it over a period of time to see how long the frequency lasts for. So it takes me a little while, but that's been how I've been working with people that have certain frequencies that they want me to work with, or various different restructuring devices, so that they can have a well-rounded view of what they are seeing and how long the frequency lasts for to a certain degree.
Yeah. Wow. You use Wi-Fi in your home? Do you have Wi-Fi signals?
We do have a Wi-Fi here. Yeah, we can
Yeah,
easily.
what would be interesting is, since Jenhan said that the Wi-Fi is disruptive to our waters, is to expose the water near your router
Yes, I've done.
and then take that same water and expose it to the 4096 frequency, which is
Right.
a fractal of creator source, actually, in our particular dimension. So it kind of aligns with, that perfection. Interesting. Una says that within the quartz, it vibrates not only in the lattice of space, but on the lattice of time. And because when you understand that everything is recorded in the lattice of time, and that the universe tends toward perfection, and because there is, say you wounded your arm, for example, um, before you wounded your arm, in the lattice of time is your unwounded arm. And so what the crystal does, it bridges through the lattice of time a resonant pattern over the dissonant pattern. And because the universe tends toward perfection, the resonant pattern predominates, and it morphs and transforms and heals in that way, because it'll look through the lattice of time for the most optimal pattern. That's how the medbed technologies work. When I worked with Marcel Vogel, I worked on a camera that could tune through time, and you could move the time spiral and see images, like say from I'll send you some links.
I'd like to see that too.
Have you heard of, he was a Russian scientist called Gennady Krokalev. He's since passed, but his work was phenomenal, and it led me on to doing some further research. Essentially, his brother had given him a magazine in English. The translation is "See the Other Way Around." In the magazine, it was stating that uh, the retina of the eye essentially receives information from the brain and translates that information into picture form and projects it out like a hologram. And he was working for over 20 years with psychiatric patients that were having hallucinations and visions. And Gennady set up a very simple design. He had a scuba diving mask that he took the lens out of the scuba diving mask, and because it's a rubber, he attached it around a lens of a camera called a zenith camera, which is a black and white camera with a long lens. And he had someone helping, and so these patients, he said, when you see something, because the trick, if you will, was that it had to be in the mind's eye for a holograph to appear. So he said, when you're seeing something, because they clearly were, they believed that they were, he said, tell us what you're seeing, and then he would take photos of their eyes. And he did this for over 20 years. And out of the 200 or so patients he did it with, 117 were able to confirm that the imagery they saw in the black and white photos was indeed what they were seeing in their mind's eye. Then this was repeated by more Russian scientists in the last 15 years. And rather than working with psychiatric patients, they worked with someone who could remote view. And they had the same setup as Gennady. And the scientist would stand behind a wall holding up numbers or shapes, simple numbers and shapes. And as she tuned in to whatever they were, she'd say, okay, I've got it. And then they would take a photo of her eyes, and they were able to repeat what Gennady did. Sadly, Gennady's life, at the end of his life, was very dramatic. He'd rung his brother and he said, after 20 years of having done this, I've just discovered something that will change the world. 3 hours later, it took his brother that long to get there. He found Gennady hanging and all of his work confiscated. So it's very, very hard to find any of Gennady's work, although I have got some pictures of it. And so what was curious for me was that after I have worked with water, I guess you could say telepathically, or projecting thoughts into water, in a very intentional way, starting with numbers and shapes for me. When I did circle, I saw a circle, etc., etc. When I was working with the triangle, just before I projected that thought into water and froze it, I thought of it more three-dimensionally, and the water built a three-dimensional pyramid upward. And so that then made me wonder, what was Gennady killed over? And you've touched on it already, Dan, a little bit, and that would be, well, what if, and I ask this question all the time, well, what if Gennady discovered that thoughts really do become things, and we're not just seeing a hologram, but something can actually develop and become visible in the material world as we know it so far? That would definitely change the world. And after seeing that my work can build three-dimensionally and build scaffolding, which is one of the questions scientists nearly always ask me, I think that there's something there potentially.
What one of the devices look like, that's the reality transflux modulator. it's something that we can use to for healing and benefiting people and helping put good thoughts out into the planetary matrix.
Well, we need
Yeah, I
more.
think you're kind of getting Veda into the Cleve Baxter kind of stuff. If you know Cleve Baxter, or you know him,
That's what got Marcel into, because he read an
huge.
article by Cleve Baxter and he thought it was garbage and he threw it in the trash and he thought, oh, this would be a good
No
course for
way.
the engineers at IBM. He had 30 engineers, they're all left brain. And so he had them, he hooked up the script chart recorder and then he burned the leaf and then he thought about burning the leaf and it squiggled and he said that squiggle changed his life and the rest is history.
It did. I mean, that was basically the level of discovery I think Veda's talking about with this other guy too. But yeah, my dad, I don't know if I told you this, he's an engineer at IBM, electrical engineer, and I used some of
Oh,
your work with
really?
to tell him like, Dad, look at this. I've got actual friends from IBM doing this. And it's interesting too that Walter Russell worked at IBM.
Hmm.
You
Oh,
know,
really? I didn't know that.
Walter
Wow.
Russell, I had no idea. This was really weird because for one thing, well, it's too much to get into, but it took me a minute to realize that Walter Russell, I don't know if either of you, how you're familiar you are with him, but he's the guy that Nikola Tesla basically said, I wish I'd seen this earlier in my life, and you should lock this up in a sepulcher for 1,000 years until humanity's ready for it. And I later realized Walter Russell was the guy who came into IBM for a decade or more. He was lecturing to the employees there and basically telling them this whole science of how to activate their inner genius and bring out their own highest potential and brilliant stuff. The entire Think campaign was from Walter Russell. Like the Think motto of IBM or whatever. My dad's got that word think on his desk. And I'm like, yeah, think. It's a good motto. But yeah, Walter Russell, he was, I mean, when you look at all his diagrams, torsion fields, the planetary magnetic fields, this guy was describing, when I look at it, I'm like, that's called hermeticism. Like the union of all opposing forces, all opposites, electricity and
Hmm.
magnetism, fundamental levels of
Yeah, yeah.
the
That's what
structure
Jen
of
Han says.
reality.
It's like the electrodes of source, that the opposites of as I
Yeah,
said, the two serpents when they're let loose to dance around the crystal, they bring
yeah,
out the essence of source, which is the reproduction of the great creation.
yeah.
It's and I in the
Well,
design of the frill generator, it's like all these elements of the opposites coming together, and
yeah,
it's the fusion of the opposites coming together that brings out this life force energy they call frill.
yeah.
Mhm.
That's exactly what everything in Egypt is. Everything is absolutely balanced. Everything is the two brain hemispheres, the Ida and Pingala, and it's all the reconciliation of opposing forces and
Yeah,
finding that unity above and transcending the duality that we're all locked into here, seeing the inward and outward quality of all. This is the core of Hermeticism. It's the core of the as above, so below, polarity, gender, all these different opposites. And that's what the Egyptians themselves called their central doctrine was called return to source. And overcoming, all these reconciling Set and Osiris and night and day to reaching this unity state that's above and transcends it all. So it's absolutely exactly what you're saying. It's what we're starting to see within a scientific framework now and can express that this was not magic or superstition back in Egypt. This was the central doctrine of this is how you actually activate the higher potential of a human being and evolve towards your mature form. Like reach the butterfly state when we're in the caterpillar state now. But this is what we're naturally meant to evolve towards and open up as we understand it. So all just comes together anyway.
One of
it
the things
does. It does.
Thank you. One of the things that the autistic community is saying is that there are 7 states of water. And I think that intuitively I've been saying this for a long time. Robert Edward Grant and his polymaths, he agrees there have to be more states to the water. And I recently spoke to one girl who she's just like beyond words, incredible. And she explained them to me. I have to re-watch it and go through it again. But the simplest form of one of the states of water that we would never have thought about, literally, it's funny that I say that word, she said is thought. Thought is a state of water. And we look at things in a very specific way because we're in this world and we've got this language to speak. But when you speak with the autistic community outside of who are kind of outside of a lot of where we sit because they're outside of their body all the time, which is one of the reasons they can connect on these levels. They say things new things for us to think about. And an example of the incredible beauty for me, water, it's a love affair. It always comes back to love and resonance in the end. We can explain things at high levels, but they always come back to the same thing. And Noah, he said, when I asked what is water, which is a very important question of which I would be asking both of you. And not from the way we might be taught in school. But Noah, he said to me, water is an expression of the Creator's first love. And when you go into the depth of that which he did and expanded upon that, it's incredibly detailed and there's science, there's spirituality, and there's overarching frequency of love and consciousness. But it goes into a lot of depth and detail, including his sister, who's also a non-speaking autist, talk about the information that's in amniotic fluid. They talk about water from Mars and how consciousness is literally, because we keep looking for water on other planets and we keep looking for water on Mars, that our conscious expression is actually transferring water from here to Mars. And they go into a lot of higher level physics as well, of which is beyond my understanding at the moment. Lots of math as well, some of them. So I've been given in the last 8 weeks probably 2 books worth of information, which I have been recording on Zoom, and their parents have been translating for me. And luckily, some of them can type. So this is coming from them. It isn't relying entirely 100% on telepathy. I would encourage you, if you are interested at all, to listen to the telepathy tapes. The first episode will tell you why this has become such a big deal. There's always controversy about everything. But I think that there's, it's undeniable with the wisdom that's come through from them on such high levels that we can all learn from and embrace, and what feels resonant or leave what doesn't. I'd be curious, if I asked you, Dan, and then asked you, Trevor, afterwards, to you, what is water?
Water. It's as John had said, it's worth a great speech. When you understand that reality as we perceive it is a holographic structure, and that the structures of reality everything has a frequency. Everything that has a structure has a frequency, and every frequency creates a structure. And that source creator, which we're all fractals of, emanates from like a musical scale of octaves of harmonics, from the highest density down to the lower octaves. And in the spectrum of creation, where like the periodic table of elements. Each element, if you change the frequency of an element, it changes the element into a different element. And so with water, you have an element that is resonant not only with every single element in our dimensional sphere, but across every dimension and density and across time and space. And this is a similar attribute to quartz. Quartz is an interdimensional bridge. It exists on all densities, dimensions. Elena had an experience on going aboard an Altian ship, and she thought, well, it's going to be, all space age and modern looking, but it was all organic. It was all these pristine crystal clusters all over that are grown in space, because this allows beings that operate in different vibrational densities to be present on board the ship, because it's resonating across the entire spectrum of densities. And so water, that's why, they say, where's water, you find life, because water, being universally resonant, that's why it's good to consume structured water that hasn't been all distorted, because when it's structured in its pristine geometry, its resonant geometry, the body easily assimilates, because the body is in the 70s, when I was building different radionic instruments, I studied a lot of different people and then one thing that in France they have this meat market, and Hieronymus noticed that the different organs of the the liver and so forth, on the frost there would be different geometric patterns in the frost above the freshly cut organs out of the animal. And so every organ in your body has a frequency geometry. And when you give it quality water, it resonates with it. It supports it. It simulates it. So water and quartz are these two elements that are in our dimensional sphere that exist in all densities and dimensions at a time. And that's what water is.
Beautiful, Dan. Thank you. And Trevor, what would your interpretation of water be?
Well, I'm glad I'm going second, because I'm really with Dan on this, and at least in the most fundamental sense, it's I think you could probably call it, compare it at least to the prima materia of the alchemists, when they're talking about the first substance, or the absolute core kind of element that our universe is made of. In some sense, what you've discovered about it and what others have helped discover is that, yeah, in some way it is like almost an antenna or a tap, where you can tap into the akasha or the dark matter or the ether, or this, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if those really have any difference at all, those terms, or if they're the exact same thing. This fluidic kind of substance that's permeating the entire universe, all time and space, in which every event, every thought, every idea, every action or event leaves an impression into this mind and memory of the universe. You could call it God, or the collective consciousness, or the Godhead, or source, any of these words. I think there's an intelligence of the universe itself. And I think water, quartz, and maybe in some ways our own DNA is an antenna that can receive the signals from that field. there's a field that reacts to our own field. We have this energy body that has this toroidal field around our own body where all of our thoughts, our energies, our habits we develop and things like that, it all gets encoded into our field as a signal. That signal's feeding out to the greater field, the environment, and then it's coming back to us. And I think that process has everything to do with the fact that we are mostly water. I think it relates to some of the stuff like Dan and Marcel Vogel have talked about, where you can impress onto water whatever intention you put into these crystals, how the quartz relates to the water, or can structure the water, or basically turn normal water into a liquid crystal, in a sense. You're turning it into something, or using your intention to make it a phone line or a psychic connection to this infinite knowledge that, yeah, you could call it the mind or memory of the universe, in a sense. The Akashic record, the Elysian fields, the Eleusis, or any of these ancient names they had for it. And you were just mentioning the word thought earlier. I want to say the word thought, as far as I understand, it goes straight back to Thoth. Thoth, or Thought is sometimes pronounced, or Toth. But this is, he's later called Hermes. He's earlier called Jehuti. And we could talk about whether or not that's a specific person or a specific entity or multiple, or if it was a title given to people who achieved a certain state. But if you go all the way back to its fundamental symbolic meaning, it's more speaking about the concept of wisdom incarnate within a human, or basically consciousness, thought. That's what it is consciousness inside the mind of a human. It was a netter, so originally, which is, often mistranslated as gods. They weren't gods. The netters were actually just forces of nature, forces of the universe that guide the constant creation of the material universe. And so the Egyptians are not here worshiping these made up, deities with animal heads for no reason. They're actually using this language to say what these qualities are. There are the qualities of a cat, the qualities of a scarab, the qualities of a snake, that have multiple different qualities they might be referencing depending on the context. And so I think water is critical to all of this. I think of it as kind of like an antenna that connects. And I think some of the things you're working on are showing that it is a connection point into that universal field that has the entire, wisdom of the universe. You can actually access your own past lives and experiences and skills and knowledge from your own soul if you tap into your own soul, yourself, past life memories. But if you do, like, for instance, what Edgar Cayce did, you can actually just tap right into the mind of God, the mind of the universe, whatever you want to call it. And I think it's a lot to do with the fact that especially our brains are mostly water. And you see this in, I was mentioning, Dan, like when they sent the water around these crystals, it's the same thing. You see a practice in ancient Egypt where you'll see people, there's a tradition where you walk around these granite pillars in circles a certain number of times. You'll see kids doing it. They're running because they want to do it quick. But you have to go around these pillars so many times, just like the water has to go around the crystal, and it structures it. So I think these ancient traditions, in many ways, are showing that they knew the water in the body is receptive to that. And potentially it's the hydrogen aspect I've heard from some people they believe is what is actually part of this tap into that larger thing somehow. But yeah, I think that, I look at the resonant technology of Egypt. When I look at them making these boxes out of bedrock, from Aswan, from granite, for instance, they'll use this bedrock. And if they take one box out of the ground and make it, and then take another out of the same exact bedrock, these two boxes are quantum entangled, sympathetic resonance, basically. These things will be connected. So I think, at least these boxes, say you take them from the same mother stone and you put one, let's say in Angkor Wat and one in Egypt, you might have an instant telepathic connection between those two places, like a psychic telephone line. But I think when you get to water, like Dan says, you're talking about something on a universally present level that's so far beyond any specific frequency of a stone or something. You're talking about the one thing that is basically the prima materia, yeah, the first substance, the absolutely universal, even outside time and space in this dimension. I'm with Dan on it. I think water and quartz are that ultimately connective source of everything. I think we're on the verge of, as you're showing me some of this stuff, developing an actual language model that can be used with the universe to learn. You know, we could be close to basically having a method of having, like Edgar Casey had. He could go anytime, any place, and read from this substance that has all events leaving an impression on it, essentially. So I don't know, I could keep going, but
Beautiful. I'm so grateful for you both answering that in your own ways so beautifully, because it also I love it when I get to know your personalities, how you guys feel and your passions that come out, because that's what lights me up when I see people with passion sharing their passions passionately. So, uh, there's lots there. There's so many conversations I'd like to have. I had a year some years ago, maybe 10 or so years ago, maybe 11, where I called it the year I thought I was going crazy. I basically wrote a book called Soul Archaeology, which I never published. And I wrote a lot of things that came out of this well of knowledge within this particular vessel anyway. And I wrote some things around pyramids and water. I find it really interesting that the water that is found under the Giza Plateau in that one area, you know, we can go down and there's like a water and there's a sarcophagus there and a little
yeah, the Osiris shaft.
yeah,
Yeah, we know a lot about that.
they
So
they
people think that,
that
yeah,
water being salt water is really interesting. Because a
yeah.
lady
It's actually not. I know people who have looked at that water, and it has salt content, but it's not as salty as the ocean. So it's not coming from the Mediterranean. A lot of people think it might be coming from Fayum, which is about like 90 kilometers away. Fayum, where we know there are tunnels running from Giza to Fayum. In some of my work, we're verifying that, but there's, you know, more than legends about it. And there was something coming from Fayum, the water there was very important, like Maris, it was called, and there was two huge pyramids right in the middle of that lake, which are gone now, but we have engravings of them. We see there used to be two giant ones about the size of Khafra, you know, a tiny bit less than the Great Pyramid, but about the size of the ones at Giza. And yeah, I think they were structuring water there, and probably some of those tunnels underground all the way from Fayum were just aqueducts, and there were probably walking ones as well where you could travel. But yeah,
what would you say was the significance of water within uh, pyramid technology, Dan and Trevor?
that's
I
another how
just want to
much time do you
apologize
have?
for the interruption. My visitor is going to be 2 hours late, so everything worked out perfect.
Oh, cool.
Um, yeah, and that thought, you were talking about thought. You know, Marcel believed that our thoughts are geometric, and that's exactly what Jenhan said. That every time we think a thought, we create these very complex tetrahedral geometries of thought that are projected. And then when we use our breath, you know, as Marcel used to pulse his breath, when you pulse your breath, it it carries consciousness, you know, and it impregnates your consciousness. Part of your soul being actually gets impregnated inside water or the quartz when you pulse your breath with intention and sync together. I just
So
wanted to add that little extra tidbit.
Well, that reminds me, I mean, I would answer the question you just asked, but just in response to that quick is that yeah, I got into theosophy early on and reading some of these authors that were spiritualists, or from the late 1800s. A lot of people started writing about this, Madame Blavatsky, and inspired all these others. um that is, there's a kind of mixed bag in there. Some of these authors, some of them I don't know if are really, some of them went in different directions I don't know if I agree with, but there was definitely some amazing ideas back there. um Annie Besant and Charles Ledbetter were two of the ones that I'm not sure if I agree with where they ended up going, but they together wrote a book that's called Thought Forms, which is really rudimentary, super important stuff, where they're literally saying, like, we have developed these clairvoyant faculties where we can observe these things, we can see people's auras, and we can see these forms that actually show up in their body's energy field. And so it's like, when someone's saying they can see your aura, they can see these different colors in it, that field you're in is literally something that you are like constantly painting it with different colors depending on your habits, your career, your hobbies, your interests. If you're
Your
spending
diet.
most of your life doing something you don't like or don't care about or are not passionate, it's gonna put this gray or this depression, and things can grow in that energy field, but they can literally be seen as well by some people. They're showing, you play a piece of music and a form comes from that piece of music, and things like this, where they're basically saying that thoughts are physical things. They are
Yeah,
actually
thoughts are
have
things.
dense form. It's on a finer density than, the physical stuff we all see, but that it is actually physically there in your field, in the energy field. And yeah, it's like sometimes I use this metaphor of like you're in a stew and you're stewing in all this stuff, and like your career or your main habits or interests could be kind of the meat and potatoes of things, but then you've got also just mannerisms or little things that you pick up, addictions or whatever. They're the spices and the different things that make this broth, and you're constantly stewing in that broth, basically. To a point where in your dreams you're going to be experiencing things based on what your energy field has in it, which are physical, actual things in this
Yeah,
higher.
Jen Han says your thoughts, it changes the microconnections in the holographic structure. The thought's strong enough, then it alters the
Yeah,
alters reality of the hologram.
yeah, I think it kind of has momentum, but it's really cool because if you recognize that, then you can realize that you can start changing it intentionally. And
Yeah.
if you've got things that are making you depressed, you can rewrite that and write it out of your experience. And change your thought patterns. You're going to reprogram the whole
Yeah.
system. It's like,
Yeah. Since we're a fractal of source, we're dual in nature and we're creative, and so we can change reality.
What are your
yeah,
thoughts
um,
around human bodies or bodies changing frequency fairly dramatically by spending time in the ocean or salt water?
um, yeah. Well, I think it's been known the ocean has some very powerful calming effects for people who spend time near it. There's so much to be said for the whales and the songs that they sing down there. I mean, whales their sense perception range is the size of the planet. They can speak to other whales on the other side of the planet through these frequencies. It is so mind-blowing, and they are extremely healing frequencies, like the ones we're looking for to heal cancer and all that stuff. People have these experiences when they hear whale calls in the wild, overcome with emotion and the sense of beauty and wonder, and this incredible emotional effect happens to people who hear them in a positive way, and things like that. And I don't know, you had asked before about how it works with the Egyptians and what this ancient stuff too. That they did have a knowledge of that, and they were, I think, actually using these obelisks and pyramids to structure the water of the Nile itself, of whatever river they're based on. It is the same technology as what Marcel and Dan have been working on, basically, where the crystals are used to affect the water. And Yeah, there have been, I was telling you a little bit yesterday about Alexander Golod, the Russian who made like 90 pyramids in his life, and they were all based on these five proportions and that kind of thing. But I was telling you a little bit about some of the water experiments he did. There was another one I don't think I mentioned where he put a pyramid up right next to this lake that was contaminated with all these heavy salts and metals and stuff. This lake was purified. I mean, it became crystal clear water. Even these salts and elements that were in that water, it became like crystal clear. And this is part of it. These pyramids, the angles they're at, things like that. When you're tapping into the energy coming out from the planet at these nodes of the ley lines where they converge and things like that, you're capturing something that the more energy and intention you put into it, the more power it has to actually purify whatever's around it. I could go on about the experiments he did. Mind blowing. They were able to heal people just storing
And
water in the pyramid.
in India, there was a road where they were fatalities almost every day. It was like horrendous. And because I think a lot of the government in India is often they're elected on their science knowledge and openness quite often. So there was an agreement that they were allowed these pyramids to be buried alongside this road with certain technologies and various things that they understood. And they proved that it made a really big difference, and there were far, far less, like 90% less fatalities, accidents, just by having done that. And pyramids, I think their energy gets stronger the longer they're in position.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things, I have a friend called Tim Moon, who I mentioned yesterday. He was one of the archaeologists at the Bosnian pyramid, and they were able to identify I can't remember the exact timing, 2.5 minutes or something. Every 2.5 minutes or 5 minutes, there was a notable tick sound that came from the pyramid. And in his opinion, it was like it was out of phase and it was trying to come back on because it'd probably been through over 20,000 years, had various different tectonic, earthquakes and various things have kind of maybe pushed it out of place, but they were able to actually pick up this constant kind of tick coming from the pyramid technology. And I think coming back to water and pyramids, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that.
Yeah, so the pyramid, the 51.843 angle is, there's a lot of interesting correlations. Quartz, all the angles are exactly 51.843 as it grows in nature. And if you look at the flower of life pattern, embedded within that geometry, you have the hexagon, you have the pentagon, the 60-degree angle. And if you look at the flower of life as a expanding one within the other, and it turns out to be one is 3 times as big as the other. In other words, the two circles that create the vesica piscis is inside of another vesica piscis that's 3 times the size, and that one's inside of another one. And what's interesting, there's always spiritual symbology, when you look at things, it talks to you. And if you take the angles where the nodal points, where the points where they meet, the geometry that forms the 51.843-degree angle pyramid within the flower of life hits the points from one to the next higher. And so it's like it's the bridge between the next dimension. And I was talking to a German doctor this morning, and we were talking about DNA and saying that there was a 51-degree angle in this one scientist was working with electron microscope and within the DNA. I'm trying to look up and find out the exact. I know the DNA is made up of hexagonal, pentagonal geometries that, doubles double spiral. Um, so yeah, there's some symbology there.
Yeah, I think the DNA also is I've seen described as stacked tetrahedrons. A tetrahedron has 4 points on it, and you got four different GATC, guanine, adenine, thymine, cytosine, the four elements, four whatever you call them, that make up DNA. I think that's tied into this as well, and maybe connected to how the DNA itself is some sort of antenna that can connect into this higher consciousness or universal consciousness. But I'm glad, Dan, that you've got that perfect illustration as your background as you're talking about this, because we can see
Oh,
that, yeah, like octaves almost of higher octaves and repeating
yeah.
patterns to the same tone almost on a different octave or level. And
Yeah.
this gets into the harmony of the spheres. And if you look at G.I. Gurdjieff, a mystic who got very deep into this, how the whole universe has these octaves. You have, the Earth level, the solar level, the galactic level. And they are all tethered up from the microcosm to the macrocosm. It's universal source at the top there. But I think this also it plays into it because we do see, for instance, at the Osirion and Abydos, you've got the flower of life, this image right behind you, burnt into the wall or whatever it is, lasered into the wall. It's not painted, something's going on, but I've seen there's like 5, 6, 7 of them right on those. This is one of the most ancient structures in Egypt and in Upper Egypt, at least, where all the temples are. It's one of the very few structures that we believe goes back to this much earlier time, well over 10,000 years old, as opposed to all this dynastic stuff. But that's where you see the flower of life right there. And the Assyrian is very interesting as well, because we're talking about the Osiris shaft at Giza. It has a similar format. And this was actually the water in both the Osiris shaft and the Osirion, both dedicated to Osiris, and this process of initiation, ritually experiencing your own death. They both have these islands where you have to cross through the water to get to the central sacred space of the temple. And the Osirian, this water, is very special. It's considered healing. It's considered magical in ways. Basically, the Osirian is some kind of alchemical laboratory where this water is processed into something that is created. It's holy water. It's like the original holy water. And when you would have to cross through that water to go into the center of the Osirian, that is the origin of the baptism tradition. That's where it comes from. That's a ritual initiation. You have to go through that water and be purified by it to go into the temple there. And this is the same thing at the bottom of the Osiris shaft. And I know the people who first discovered the sarcophagus there, which Dr. Hawass kind of came out and showed later, but my friends didn't really get so much credit for it. But you have the same thing there at Giza, where you have to go through the water basically to get into this main island, small island within the chamber. And that water, it's said to have healing properties. People have tried drinking it. People touch it. They save it. I'd like to, I'll try and get you some of that water from the Osirian. I'll say as well that it connects to this other story of this guy in Illinois who was just obsessed with Egypt. And he decided he had a successful cement company and he chose to build his entire house into a scale replica of the Great Pyramid. He built a huge pyramid in the middle of nowhere just because he felt like it. He coated the whole thing with gold, with a layer of gold, very thin layer of conductive, like the fine limestone that's used at the Great Pyramid. But it was like a 1/7 scale or something, or 1/9 scale of the Great Pyramid of the same dimensions. And this guy's building this thing. All of a sudden, this water starts coming up out of the ground. And then more and more of it starts coming up. In the foundations they're building, they don't know. The water table is just rising up to the structure they're building. And by the end of the construction, this pyramid was in the middle of a lake that was not there before. Just made it to the pyramid house. This is the gold pyramid of Gurney, Illinois, and this is the lake that came up out of the ground when it was built out of nowhere. Suddenly, this water just came up to the surface, and some of these guys who are working with him start drinking the water and saying that it's healing them of all these things, of these different conditions they had. And soon enough, everyone's coming from all over the world to get this magical healing pyramid water. So it's like this guy didn't even know what he was doing. He just had this feeling, connection to Egypt. He really loved the culture and he started doing it. A lake formed around it. And we know that the Great Pyramids at Giza, they are on top of these huge aquifers. They were pumping in water in some of the aqueducts into the pyramid. It very clearly had something to do with the energetic function of the pyramid, um, probably helping it to function as it does as a distributor or harvester or battery or however it works with the earth energies.
On the
Um,
planet Era, the frill generators are always near water. What water does, according to Genhan, is that its property, it amplifies the frill. So the frill generators are always didn't mean to interrupt you, but I have a few slides. If you have time, I can show you a few visuals.
Absolutely. Let me
yeah,
just
that'd be cool.
here we go.
I'd say just wrapping it up is also that well, that story is that same thing as Nikola Tesla. He only built his towers on top of aquifers. It's the same thing because he realized this was a wireless distributor. So I think he realized the ancients had already done that, basically.
Well, thank you.
I'll just blast through here just a few slides. Just sometimes visuals help understanding things. The depiction of Junhan crystals, they embed consciousness. He says that the core holographic structure of quartz, the purest material in the universe, based on the same core fractal formula as water, and both are interdimensional bridges. Water can store data just as water does because it's constructed on the same core formula. But crystals have way more capacities. It actually embeds consciousness, and they exist on all dimensions at a time. Tetrahedral fractal geometry, the secret of the universe, the elements are made up of that. The holographic geometry is made up of these three elements. Talked about I was asking about the replicators, how they work. Geometry of thought, breath, breath projects a thought. Marcel, obviously validated that. He was talking about the DNA with our bodies are made up of our planet's DNA. And even if you go off planet, we're still connected to our planet. Just like he says, he's from the planet Era, so he's always in constant resonance with so the show we did. We actually affected the Schumann resonance. I used to work with Dr. Robert Beck, who was a pioneer in brainwave entrainment with the Schumann resonance and was able to scientifically validate it. Apparently, we spiked it on this one show we did. Importance of love. And, Emoto's work, John Hand says dissonance cannot attune with an ordered state of geometrical resonance, and that's why love, gratitude, compassion, it's all taking form, but the others just don't, they're not resonant. Dr. Robert Beck, he did experiments with people in triple mu metal cages with MIT, and they could vary the frequency. Our brains have these long chain cholesterol esters that are sensitive to 1/100th of a nanotesla that will sync on. And I've done double-blind experiments when I worked with the government and validated all this stuff. Our brains, just like Jen Han says, are in interresonance with our planet. That's why he said we can change the entire planet with the simple power of our minds.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll send it
Water,
to you
by
later.
its natural core structure, is a universal conducting medium. Love is a more complex holographic structure, but from the same core fractal pattern formula as water. Crystal is a derivative pattern from water and love, but built on the same core fractal formula. This is why they all interface naturally, because they're all built on the same mathematics. They he can only give me so much. He can't give me the exact formulas, but he's given me a lot. And you can see all the geometries in nature formed from these core samples that they take. About the structure of the matrix, how it goes, and how it looks, the void.
I would also just real quick throw in that if you look at these like Arabic sacred geometry forms, they are always using these same as the flower of life hexagonal grid patterns, the 60-degree, like six-way complete infinite tessellations where you can make whole fields that are always in these rosette patterns, they call them, like a 12-point rosette, but it can always be repeated 6 times around itself, like because it's based on these 60 degrees and those angles.
Mm-hmm. But quartz, it reorganizes dissonance with a resonant template because it repairs by transponding with a vibratory key of the previous state before the alteration was made. This is the original conversation we were having about the importance of cutting the crystal in alignment with the natural lattice structure of the crystal. It's one thing Marcel would have loved to have known, that he made crystals with many different sides, but when you cut it in alignment with the natural lattice structure, it creates this singularity vortex.
And that's all the
It,
obelisk where it's 60 degrees cut on the top.
And this should be of interest to you, Trevor. Why the 51.83-degree angle? It's a ratio that acts as a transponder. It's dynamic geometry. Some shapes, because of their proportions, naturally affect the holographic structure of the matrix. As we use these pyramidal ratios to build our frill generators, because the geometrical structure of the central crystal, in other words, the crystal is also at 51.843 degrees, and so it resonates with form resonance with the pyramidal structure.
Yeah.
It says the ratio of the dimensions of this pyramid, referring to the one in Giza, is the most exact as it corresponds to a universal value, which is light. There's a whole thing about light. Geometry generates frequency. Remember, I told you, quartz, light, love, water have the same frequencies.
Yeah.
And why the 60-degree angle? Because it imprints into the holographic matrix, which is, made up of tetrahedrons of 60 degrees. Interesting obelisks have 60 degrees at the
Okay, you
top.
got to it anyway, what I just said, yeah.
Um, now I don't remember some of this stuff, but he says, I've chosen a mission to show the people of our planet how to activate the vortex and modify reality. It's forbidden by the Prime Directive, and this is the answer to the forbidden question. It's something out of a past life memory came up about the interdimensional portal that's in between the charge triads. Here you can see the pattern better. In very light, you can see the next
Can
dimension. Can you see
I
that?
jump? Yeah, yeah.
You see where these points hit right here?
Yeah.
It's hitting in exactly the next dimension, which forms the 51.843-degree angle. And
Yeah.
of course, the hexagon and the pentagon and the 60-degree angle are all
Yeah.
there.
I want to say something about that image quick because it's pretty important, but it's funny that you created this exact image. I created this exact image myself too. I saw someone make it, the seed of life with the hexagon and the pentagon above it. This exact shape, it shows the relationship of the cubit, the meter, and the foot. You can derive them all exactly from that.
Right. Yeah, you shared that with me. Yeah, that was profound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only did that, but when that happened, and this is all written in my book, I'm going to be putting out soon, but the bizarre things that happen. I redrew this image for my own book in an easier to see form, that exact shape you're showing right there. I mean, minus the triangle on the bottom, but I drew that shape, and that day a crop circle appeared that was the exact same form that
Oh,
I could
there,
overlay it on, and I just
there's
dropped it in Photoshop onto. I could show you that.
Oh yeah,
I
I'd love to
have
see it.
my
There is so much. I mean, when you get into it, I'm scratching the surface here. There is so
yeah.
much embedded in this simple little pattern that you can make with a compass of circles.
That whole thing
It's
was wild. Because I drew the shape that showed up, and then I realized you could overlay it in two different scales, and it's showing absolutely this crop circle was showing the relation. I was writing this whole section of my book about how the Egyptians knew the meter, foot, and cubit, as well as seconds, minutes, hours, all this other stuff. And it showed
it,
up. Then they came back and erased half the triangles in this form, and it was really wild stuff. Yeah, I can show
I'll
you
just
pictures.
go over this real quickly. You know, in our DNA, you can see the pentagon hexagon relationship that's there. And the way you cut the crystals, so you have a receptive and an active end. The receptive is based on the golden mean ratio, which, as you know, the pentagon is a profound example. Within the Great Pyramid, you have the golden mean ratio all over with the 51.843. And with the 60 degree, which is all related to tetrahedral geometry, such as, you know, within the hexagon. So there's this hexagonal pentagonal relationship that these
Yeah, that's
two,
actually expressed in the bent pyramid as well. The two angles of the bent pyramid, they express the hexagon and pentagon as well, the different angles.
the angles of inclination causes the difference in frequency spin. They're both operating. I need to do a better illustration of this, but they form two vortices. And as Jen Hen says, the two dynamics counter-rotate and meet at the vortex singularity. Because of this counter-rotating dynamics, the vortex is opened by phase conjugation of the two frequencies. I asked him what happens if they're both 52 or 60 degrees. He said they would just cancel each other out, but you need a difference. He said at the same frequency rate, the dynamics cancel. You need a difference in the speed rate to create a dynamic for the experience to tend toward perfection. And since nothing in the universe ever reaches the absolute point of perfection, the universe is alive through the dynamics of evolution. Everything in the universe tends toward evolution and tends toward movement toward perfection. And this is how they convert etheric energy into physical reality. The 51.843 angle geometry transpons the etheric energy on this end, and the 60-degree angle geometry into the holographic matrix of the universe. This is on this end, changes the physical reality. This is a great network. This is how we implement etheric energy into physical reality. And this is how the liminal geometric point of transfluxation, in other words, that's sometimes called the eye, where this vortex forms, this is allows the intentions of consciousness to imprint a geometric thought pattern. And this is basically kind of a fundamental of a lot of their technology. Now, I shared this old 1970s Kirlian photograph showing a double-coiled torsion field coming off of in this Kirlian photograph. I showed it to Jen Han, and he said, a pyramidion creates a frill vortex. The frill is the etheric energy. The vortex you depict in this visual is the etheric energy harvested by the pyramidion. In other words, the pyramids in Egypt have this double coiled torsion field coming off the top that's in the
Yeah,
ethers. The
I've
dynamic
seen it
influx
before.
of the harvested energy, the mathematical ratio of the pyramidion, creates a double coiled torsion field. And he says the two dynamics twirling in opposite direction, they're spinning in two different directions, and they create a phase conjugated tension that creates a singularity in the hologram, a convergence of infinite power. This Steph helped me with trying to make an animation of that. But nothing happens until you piezoelectrically activate it. And to open the vortex eye, it needs to be piezoelectrically stimulated, either with physical, with your fingers, or sending in electronic pulses. It creates a dynamic reaction between the two polarities of the charge triads of the lattice structure. It creates an exponential reaction that triggers the singularity portal. This was basically the question I asked. I asked, does this open up a interdimensional portal? You can find out where this is in the crystal by taking these two angles. Where they meet across, there's a flat discoidal area. You can have inclusions, but you want to avoid in this particular area. I put a little piece of tape, on the crystal to figure out where to place your fingers to kind of give it a little squeeze. But it's not just physical. It's like your
Squeeze it with your mind.
consciousness communicates through your fingertips. And then we set it up like this. So this is a more advanced setup to pulse it, to keep the vortex open, gamma brain waves, the pineal gland. Jen Han says the crystals in your pineal gland are calcium carbonate, which is organically produced by the human body's tissues. These microcrystals generate an electromagnetic field at the center, which is an interdimensional vortex for consciousness. It's where our soul connects in to animate our avatar. It says humans across all races of our species on any world have this vortex gland. The reptilians and the grays, they don't have it. That's why they can't access what we're able to. And so this is the interface between our pineal gland vortex and the open vortex of the crystal. This goes into frill, how the spaceships work, details on frill.
I think
This
there's
is
also
the
in the
older sister.
pineal, you have like the same kind of piezoelectric effect can actually emit light. If I'm saying that generally correct, that the pineal gland is actually, it's a shriveled little raisin of a gland at this point, but it's actually meant to be like an
It
eye
produces light.
center of your brain.
It,
Yeah, it's like
the
when you're connected to it, it's actually wired into the visual cortex of the brain. It's supposed to actually see things. And if you don't have the light that comes off these crystals somehow, it's like there's a secret movie theater in your brain just playing it for the eye that's in the middle, that obviously no light can get through your skull into there, but somehow it's like these the crystals, whether the calcium or what you said, carbonate, they with that piezoelectric effect, you can get light to come off of a quartz.
Yeah,
If
it's
under
our connection to source, and the shape of the vortex field creates the pine cone-like shape, which can connect to any point in time and space. Elena saw this on another planet, how they wind it. This is talks about the dual nature of source. This is how the frill generators work on the planet Era. Our science team, we created one. How you have to wind copper in one direction, the silver the other way, and you pulse it alternately. And we presented it to a lot of people back in Orlando.
I was there.
You were there. Oh, cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then Elena, just on February 8th, we made crystals here on this planet and gave a gift to Thorhan, to Una, and just recently, a few days ago, on March 27th, Elena got taken up to the scout ship and they got teleported into the mothership, the Excelsior, and she gave Jenhan his crystal. And I think I sent you a link on that, didn't I? The reaction of how that went. He was kind of blown away. Wow, a crystal with my name on it. It's like he's going to take it back. He's working on Mars right now, doing terraforming operations, so he gets to see. Becky and Russell, they've been instructing their cutters. I have no money interest in any of this, to cut them.
Oh yeah, that's where he sent me though. I got my one from them, Crystal Light and Sound.
These are different. This is a thing I want to connect with Veda on so much. Uh, is it based on the statement, John? Quartz light love water. I asked, since quartz resonates at the frequency of 4096, I asked, does 4096 hertz also clear the pattern imprints in water? And Jenhan said, yes, it does. Even when used on your physical body, it shakes the dissonance out of the water that makes up your physical shell. I ask, in other words, it can clear or even structure water to be healthful? Jenhan says, yes, it can. And this is an old slide I did a long time ago, and this just gets wild. You can actually, the crystal will levitate and implode and turn into light and transcend density if you hit the saturation point. And he gave an exercise how to repair your DNA. And it's simple. You pulse frill into your heart vortex and feeds the upward toroidal flows from your base to your crown chakra and feeds this flow. It's kind of like the ET yoga that they do to it reconnects the hydrogen links.
Yeah. I think that's
Not a
like the
cool
Anunnaki
disclaimer.
pine cone and handbag and the Egyptian Ankh and was scepter. I think those are a device to basically do that, to send this energy into your spinal main current that feeds the rest of your nervous system.
Anyway, I just want to go through a couple of slides for some visuals on all that, but I have a whole lot more information that's in our latest science class. As soon as Stephanie finishes with the graphics and things, I'll share it with both of you, and that'll bring up even more questions. I'm learning as we do this as well with my friend on Mars.
Visuals are super helpful for me. I learn really well with visuals. I have this that Apollo gave me. I'll show you real quick. I haven't worked too much with it, but it has, how he was putting the gold in various homeopathy and things.
Oh,
And so,
right. That's Apollo.
yeah. So I'm been starting to do some work with this. It's not got another point here. It's maybe more
Right.
used for
It's a
healing.
different technology that he's using. He's implementing Marcel's technology, but he
He has his
um
own way for sure. But I'm interested in working with crystals also, like what you were showing, because I really want to. I think Marcel, I don't know, I always felt like if I'd ever got to meet him, we would have been best of friends. He always looked like somebody that I would have been friends with. And I feel like there's a real connection that I feel with him and his work. For me, much of my work, well, not much of my work, much of my life is intuitive. For him, I can feel who it is that where we can share information together to make this world better, and for and it kind of just works like that. You just get a feel for people. It's part of the way in which water and the crystals within us work as a liquid antenna, and we all give off, like you talked about. It's like music. I think we're all playing our own song, and that song changes with changes of perception. And so we have a liquid crystal antenna because electrical charge is a big piece of the way in which water can bring information and share information. Therefore, I think for me, learning to work with my intuition, and also I have an ability to see light colors around living things. And that's been very helpful, I think, to be able to tap into much of many of things that ancient people have talked about, because I can see the colors. And when I see someone who has a disharmony in their body, the color is always a very dull yellow color. It's a very specific color that I see. So I'm going to have to go, sadly, because I am meant to be on a
Oh,
podcast.
sure. Yeah, I thought this was going to be like a 10-minute
Same,
introduction, just say
and
hi and
I'm
give a little
so
bit of
But I'm so grateful that we were able to actually have this extra time. Sometimes it always feels like meeting in person is it's so, sometimes it's so much nicer because we can really be together and have time together and share stories together. But this has been the next best thing. So,
Oh, I'm so grateful for Trevor introducing me to you. It's like all three of us can kind of powwow on some of this. I have a whole lot more to share with you, and I know you do with me as well. And I would love to understand more of your process, and I would keep any proprietary information, to myself. I have no financial interest. I just want to assist the evolution of our planet and help people.
I teach
Um,
freely. Like, I can just show you next time if we hop on. I'll just teach you. It's not
but I,
something I
I would
withhold.
love to work with you with the 4096 hertz and discover what it does with the work that you're doing, and to see if what I'm working for is to quantify, this information that I'm receiving from the scientists. Um, and I think your methodologies is one avenue that can indicate that.
Well, I have an ability to be very neutral after working prolifically for 14 years straight, doing crystallography, multiple crystallography nearly every day. One of the things that many of the things, water's taught me many things, but one is that when you try to control, program, or put any kind of like desire into the water from a
Oh yeah,
certain
you
place,
contaminate the result. Yeah.
it doesn't work that way. So by becoming more neutral and more curious rather than being controlling, water is very receptive and is ultimately a teacher for me. And I've become more and more interested in how water what water wants to share with me, rather than if water can replicate my glasses or something. Because I've got 64,000 photos of water doing these things. It's not just some one little thing here and there.
Right.
Because of neutrality, I believe that the results from what we're seeing are pretty valid. And if I do find myself in any frame of mind, I won't do the work, or I do it 20 times in a row until I've lost any desire for outcome, because I have to have some neutrality within this. And neutrality, if the only area where it's okay is if curiousness is there with no attachment to outcome. And that's a very important piece. Intention is so powerful, though,
Mm.
that's also the secrets and the subtleties. So I mentioned I have to drive to Auckland to get my municipal tap water. I keep it in out of the light. I keep it in a specific place so that I can work with it as the control water. But if I wake up in the morning and I just start thinking about that poor water in the cupboard, and I'm thinking about, gosh, I just want to give it some love. It's been gone through so much trauma. Even just that. And then I decide that I want to use it that day, it's ruined. Like, it's beautiful. It looks like now it looks like water that's come from a stream. That's what I mean about just the attachment, loving connection. As I have seen, and I've been sent every restructuring thing known to man, is that loving intention will change water structure quicker than anything else that I've ever seen. And because I'm not freezing water solid, I'm freezing water to a liquid crystal. So it's not a solid that we're looking at exactly. There is liquid on top and ice underneath. It only takes about 5 minutes and 30 seconds. And I'm tipping the liquid away, and I'm photographing the crystallography that's stuck to the dish. That ice has pushed all of the solates out of itself. So it's in a pure state, a negative charge and all of the different aspects. But because water is mostly light, it's the matter is actually the hydrogens and oxygens, and the rest is photonic light. And I've seen light emanating out and around of the tip of the ice as it's beginning to form when I've opened the freezer at the right time. I think it's light that's paving the way for the design of this imagery. And so when you start looking into the stage of water that I'm actually taking it out at, where it's not exactly a solid or and not exactly a liquid, then that stage itself has the ability to share information on a very complex, deep level. But it's also very, very sensitive and reads your biological environment. It's water speaking to water at the end of the day. The way water is able to share information from what you need to see, doesn't ever make mistakes. I've discovered so many things that I'd love to share, but at the end of the day, I have found that if there's an attachment to an outcome, the outcome is changed from where it would be if I was in a neutral space. And that is an important part for the work that I do when it comes to doing work like you're asking me to do. So that's been very helpful for me to have been gifted with that gift, because I didn't start this work with any attachment to outcome, just out of curiosity, and that's continued on and on and on. And I have been I had a few times where I have agreed to do some things, like someone asked me, can water be deceived or tricked? And the reason that they asked was because they wanted to know, if you look at the work of Tesla and you look at the work of Victor Schauberger and you look at some of the great pioneers, their work, just like fire, it can warm you or burn you. And so at the end of their lives, their work was often taken and used for more nefarious reasons. This person, specific to my freezing method and specific to certain things, was wanting to know, can water be manipulated? Because if we have a future of technology and water, then if we do, could that only be worked with in the right environment of conscious state, rather than a manipulative environment? It won't work properly. And so I agreed to do it. And I simply said to the water, and I know that sounds crazy to some, but after having seen so many results of water responding rather than reacting, I can do anything with it. And I said, can you show me something that's just so beautiful between me and you, and I won't share it? And I immediately froze it before the guilt set in, because it really set in, because I wouldn't normally ever do that. I was working with spring water, which had a naturally hexagonal pattern. I call it a star fern hexagon, a six-sided star with ferns off each leg that create this hexagonal pattern, which is one of the energetic health patterns of water, and the bigger the better when it comes to those patterns. But I was like, oh gosh, I probably destroyed it. And when I took it out, there was some disorder, but there was two clear letters, and I've seen words in multiple languages in water. I know that's hard to even believe, but when you see it, you see it. But there was a word no in the ice, and then water wouldn't design with me for an entire week. And I'm like, well, the one thing I know about water is it doesn't judge. It's more like an observer in one of its spiritual aspects. And at the end of that week, I realized that it was me that was judging me. And when I forgave myself, then the water started to play with me again. And it was a really good wake-up call to remind myself to begin to heal myself along this journey. Water is the ultimate teacher of healing and love and light. And that's what I keep seeing through my multiple tributaries of journeys with water, is that the more I realize that water sees me and responds to me in a way that I have not yet truly seen myself. And that the more I start to see myself as water sees me, the more I can do, the more I can share in this world. And from that perspective, water to me is a container of creator, source, energy that is ultimately shining love and light upon me and guiding me in this work, which keeps evolving. And I know nothing. I know but a drop in this giant ocean of water, but it resonates for people. And I often felt that the water within the earth's mantle has been wanting to flood. And I was thinking, gosh, no, not a flood. You mean a flood of the earth? eventually it came to me that it's not bad. It doesn't want to flood the earth. It wants to flood the hearts of the people in it. And if we can speak to them in a way that actually they can hear and resonate and understand with no judgment, then that's a beautiful way forward, and that's my intention. It always just, it comes from a place of love, but it also is a place of being a bridge between all these different places where people can take what you're saying seriously. And people also feel the voice of water because their bodies of water, and ultimately they feel it. And it's why I share my techniques so freely and everything. It's like that way people get to form these connections and see for themselves that it's not just me, it's all of us, all of us together. I have a podcast I need to be on, but I want to thank you, Trevor, for this beautiful introduction. I am going to be filming in Florida May the 16th, and then the 17th would be a day open. Now, I've offered to pay for flights to Florida, but I also understand that you, Dan, you have you have a different situation. You've got to feel whatever feels good for you. And I think I'm also speaking to my film guy today, so I need to know that we can do an extended filming, and that could
Oh, I
potentially.
look forward. Yeah, that was beautiful. It's like, yeah, I'm just looking forward to quantifying so people know this is real, not made up. You know.
Yeah, I think that's the time this is happening more and more and more. Where we are, the quantifying it is the seeing is believing stage that we're still at. And I feel like that's very important for people because they want to see results. That's why I think people like the work that I'm doing because it's very, very visual and pictures speak a
Oh,
thousand words to people.
oh,
So
Oh,
you're
yeah.
you're a pioneer. Yeah, absolutely. It's so important, the work you're doing.
I appreciate
And
that.
and you too, Trevor. What you're doing too is amazing. So
You too, Dan.
well, we're all pioneers in moving
We're all.
moving this forward, in our own unique ways.
It is reaching absolutely a culminating point. It's really exciting, and I'm so excited to finally connect with you both together. I mean, Dan, we've been talking a few years, but yeah, I think just figuring a way to maybe pull it back together. I don't know if we want to try and get Tony involved next time we talk, if we have more time, but we could throw it out to him. Like I said, Tony's a good friend of Dan and mine. He's been figuring out a lot of cool stuff about this himself, and very much particularly
Oh
into
yeah, yeah, I love Tony.
the obelisk.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
been doing his own
Let's do it
experiments
again.
too.
And
I was
who knows what all these minds asking questions come up with answers.
uh,
Let me talk
just-
to my film guy and just make sure that that works properly on his schedule too, and then we'll take it from there. But I'm thinking that we'll have to have that conversation maybe online or a little bit later today because I have to get on
yeah.
this call. I'm so grateful to you
Yeah.
Okay.
guys. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
maybe we can do maybe we can do a Facebook conversation with all three of us so we can just keep up that way. A messenger group that's
Yeah,
been working for the other think tanks I'm in.
WhatsApp, whatever
Awesome.
works, guys.
All right.
Thank
Well, I look forward to our
Awesome.
next time. All
you, Dan. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you all.
right.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.